Hey there, Kevin from Happy Coding here. Over the last few days, I've been participating in an event called January, where each day you get a different prompt and you use that prompt as inspiration for a new project every day. So I've done a few of these, and you can go back and watch the videos, or you can come to happycoding.io to see some of the projects I've put out there. I've been having a lot of fun with it, and I think it's a really cool little community to be a part of. So I've really liked seeing what other people are doing on Twitter and stuff. But today I think I'm going to keep going with that. So today's prompt is make a grid of permutations of something. And so what that means to me is like you make a two-dimensional grid that shows a bunch of different variations of the same kind of thing. So it actually is pretty similar to a project I worked on a few days ago, and that is the random city project where it ends up being a grid of kind of random buildings and houses and stuff. And I thought of maybe reusing this, but that kind of felt like cheating, and I kind of wanted to put something new together. I also thought of maybe doing like another 2 or 3 parter where, similar to how I did draw house, draw town, draw city, these kind of lead into each other. I thought of doing like draw something and then draw random something and then use that to draw a grid. But honestly, I wasn't really feeling that yesterday. I would have had to do some like pre-work, and I just didn't feel like it. So instead, I'm kind of just starting from scratch. And I think what I'll do is maybe create a grid of random flowers, only because random flowers are sort of, I don't know, I kind of just already know how to do them. And I'm going to base my code today off of some code that I put together for some of the earlier tutorials. And so here's what a flower looks like in Kevin land. It's really it's 5 circles, and that way I don't have to think too hard about it and can base everything off of the sort of coordinates of the circle, and then do that in a grid. So anyway, that's kind of where my head's at right now. So to get started, I'm over here in my P5 editor, and what I want to do is maybe define a function called something like draw flower, and draw flower is going to maybe take an x and a y parameter or argument or whatever you want to call it. And for now, maybe let me just draw a circle at x, y, and maybe I'll take a size as well, x, y, size, and let me maybe draw flower at width over 2 just to get started, height over 2, and 100. So what I should see is I should draw a flower, and right now flower is just a circle. And there you go. So I've got my pieces connected. My draw function calls my draw flower function, and I can use this to sort of iterate. So maybe I draw another circle, and this is going to be like maybe like x minus size, y minus size. So I'm subtracting a little bit from the x and y. So that's a little bit too much, and so maybe what I want to do is maybe let me divide this by 2. I think I might actually put this in a variable or something. Yeah, so you can sort of see that this will be my kind of pattern. So the size of the circle is 100. So if I want to move this circle to sort of overlap with my first circle, then I want to move it not quite 100, but 100 divided by 2 or 50. That kind of makes it like up here and overlap with the first one. So maybe let me put this in a variable so I can reuse it. Maybe like spacing equals size over 2, and then I can do something like this: x minus spacing, y minus spacing. And I'm drawing this circle first so that it shows up kind of underneath the sort of center circle. You can try switching those to see what would happen. So I'm going to do something very similar for the rest of them. X maybe plus. So now I should see one over in the top right corner. There we go. And kind of the same exact deal for y plus. So y plus and y plus. So now I should see sort of my complete flower. And there you go. It's not super exciting yet, but that's okay. So what I want to do next is maybe I'll start with my grid, since that's kind of the whole point of this. There's kind of two pieces to this. There's grid, well, maybe three. There's grid, there's something, and there's permutations. So I have something. My something is a flower. And next I could either do permutations or I could do grid. I think I'm going to do grid. So what I want to do is maybe a couple ways I can do this. I can define my grid in terms of maybe how big each square in the grid is, or I could define it in terms of how many squares are in the grid. And I can get to the other value from the first one, but I want to figure out like how I want to think about my problem. And I think what I'm going to do is think in terms of how many cells across and how many cells down it is. So maybe I do something like rows and columns, or columns and rows. So columns is like the number of columns, but how many like vertical slices you split your screen up into. Let me maybe start with 5, and same kind of thing for rows equals 5 for now. So then I'm going to use this in some other calculations. So what I need to do is like cell width and cell height. So cell width is going to be height divided by columns, I think. So let's think about this. If columns is 1, then my cell width will be height, this should be width. It should be width divided by columns, which will be just width. So that's right. If it's 2, it'll be half and half. If it's 3, it'll be split into thirds. So I think that's right. And the pattern will hold true for the height as well, equals height over rows. So the number of columns and then the number of rows. So now I know how wide and how tall each cell is going to be. And I can use that in my for loop. So I can do for, I could do X and Y, or I could do like R and C. I think I'm going to do R and C. So for column equals 0, column is less than columns, C++, not the language, but just increasing that variable. And then I want to do maybe the same thing for R. So for let R equals 0, R is less than rows, row plus plus. So like column and row, but I'm going to use it as kind of a coordinate. Let's clean this up. Okay, so now I've got my for loop, and I've got some variables that might come in handy. And now what I want to do is I want to call draw flower in here. And I think what I want to do, so I've got my sort of width and height, and maybe what I'll do just for fun is so what I want to do is calculate an X and a Y. So const X equals, so it's going to be like C times cell width, and my Y is going to be R times cell height. So I'm defining my grid in terms of the number of columns and rows, and that I use that to figure out how big each square is going to be, and then I use the size of each square or each rectangle in the grid, each cell in the grid, to calculate where in the grid that will show up. And what I can do now is say rect xy cell width cell height, and I should basically see a grid in here. And let me maybe get rid of this draw flower for a second. And there you go. So what I'm drawing is my grid based on how many columns and rows I've set. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. I can maybe increase or decrease these values. So if I say only 3 rows, then I still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns and only 3 rows. And this gives me a lot of freedom because I'm calculating the size and the positions of all the cells based on these columns and rows. If I want to play around with these counts, I only need to change it here, and I don't have to then go back in and change this code at all, because it should sort of already work. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, that works. So I'm pretty happy with that. The one thing I might do next is, so the XY right now is kind of the upper left corner of each cell, and I've defined my draw flower function in terms of kind of a center. So I think what I'll do is change this a little bit and say X equals, so C times cell width will give me sort of the left edge of each cell. So if I add cell width divided by 2, then I get the sort of center coordinate of the cell. And same thing for height. So cell height divided by 2. So now my xy is kind of the center, which doesn't really make sense with the rect function, but might make sense with the ellipse function. So now I see a bunch of sort of ellipses. And yeah, there we go. So I'm defining my cells in terms of the center, which is going to come handy in a second. So I could, I think, just straight up go flower here, although flower only takes a size, it doesn't take a separate width and height. So what I might do here, I could just kind of choose one arbitrarily for now. Let's see what this looks like. And draw flower. Ooh, that's not flowers, but that's kind of a trippy pattern. I kind of like that. Kind of looks like fish scales or something. But it's because my flower is like too big, so my flowers are all kind of overlapping each other. My draw flower takes a size, but that's not really the size of the flower. That's more the size of the center petal. So to make this a little easier, what I might do is do some more calculations in here. So I think what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to give it a width and a height, maybe. Let me think about this. Width and height. No, I kind of like my flowers to be kind of square, so I think I'm going to stick with size. And what I'm going to do is try to make it so that this size is the whole width and the whole height of my flower. Let me think about this for a second. Let me see if I want to do it that way. And I think I can, because all I think I need to do is divide it by some value. So const petal size, something like this, equals size divided by what's it going to be? So if this is my flower and I have like half a circle up here and half a circle down there, I think it's just 2. So I've got one full circle here, one half circle up here, and another half circle down here. So it's like 2 circle sizes. So we're going to find out. And then this needs to be like petal size divided by 2, I think. And then I need to do a bunch of pasting. So this needs to be, petal size needs to be here. And what I'm hoping to see is now my flowers will actually be flowers instead of these weird fish scales, because they won't overlap anymore. And oh, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. That's pretty cool already, even though it's just like gray and white. Maybe just because it's been a long day for me, but I kind of see like an optical illusion kind of pattern if I stare at it. Anyway, so that works pretty well. I'm pretty happy with that. And so what do I want to do next? So I've got my something, and I've even got my grid. So I could try maybe to experiment with this a little bit, maybe just increase one of these. So yeah, okay. I've still got the overlapping thing happening because I'm just passing cell width in here no matter what. So I think maybe what I want to do is maybe do min cell width, cell height. So I'm just choosing whichever value happens to be smaller, and making sure that they stay square. So yeah, it's kind of goofy looking. I don't hate it, actually. It kind of looks kind of cool, but I think what I'll end up doing is just making my rows and my columns equal anyway, so it kind of doesn't matter, but just to make sure that my code doesn't do anything too silly. It handles it in a certain way. There are other ways to handle it, but this is at least reasonable. It doesn't break horribly, so I'm going to keep it that way. But I think I'm going to change this to just be the same. That might be a little bit too much for right now. Anyway, so that's pretty cool. That's pretty much like what I'm going for. It's a grid of flowers, so mission accomplished on that front. But it's not really permutations of a flower. It's just the same flower over and over again. And so what we can do is You probably know what's coming next if you've seen any of my other videos, but it's my favorite thing to do, and that is to introduce random colors. So let me call my favorite line of code. So I'm going to just fill every flower with a random color. And it's not bad. It's kind of cool. I'm calling no loop so that it doesn't, it's not too flashy for anybody who has issues with that. But if you're comfortable with seeing something a little bit more animated, take out this called a no loop and see what it does. It'll be kind of cool. But I'm going to keep it how it is for now. So I fill my entire flower with a random color right now. I kind of like the idea of I don't know, I should have maybe looked up what these things are called, but like the middle part of the flower, I kind of want that to be a different random color. So let me see what that looks like. Yeah, maybe. That's pretty cool. I think another thing I might do is, so right now I've got size and they're all the same size, and I'm passing in a min value here. And so I'm trying to think of how I could maybe introduce some changes in how the size works. And let's think about this. I think what I might do is say something like const flower size equals maybe a random value between size times 0.5 and size, and then base all of my other stuff off that. I think that's maybe the only place it goes. Yeah. So I pass in a value of size, which is kind of the size of the cell itself, and then my flower size will be some random number that's a little bit smaller than that. So now all of my flowers should be a different size. Yeah, man, I kind of like that. One thing I might do is get rid of this dumb gray background. I might make it dark. I might make it green. So let's see, R, maybe a little bit G. Wait, very G. I always switch G and B. RG, and then maybe a little blue. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, man, I'm into that. I might do something like stroke weight 2, make it a little bit more clear. Yeah, that's cool. I'm already into this. That's like, I'm done. Mission accomplished. Video over. I'm really happy with this. This is actually pretty cool, and it gets at like the concepts I wanted to play with. So let's see. Let me maybe just revisit my code. Maybe let's try a couple things. What happens if I play with the columns and rows again? Yeah, similar to what we saw before. It's kind of goofy if it's not a square, but that's because of how my logic works, but I'm okay with that. Yeah, I actually don't hate this. It actually looks kind of cool. It's not quite the effect I'm going for, but I like it. So maybe try 10 and 10. And like I said before, like because I based all of my logic off of the number of columns and rows, it's now really easy for me to play with these values, and I don't have to go in here and rethink harder about exactly what to do in here because it's all based off of these variables. So changing them changes everything else. So I know this will probably not look good, but let me just try something. Let me increase it to some unreasonably high number. And yeah, the stroke weight's way too high, so it's just kind of like dark. That looks pretty cool, actually. I'm gonna save that because that's kind of a cool, like glitchy thing. I think that's just because all you're seeing is like really tiny outlines of flowers. So, let's see. I could maybe do something like no stroke here, just so we see more of the colors. Yeah, man, that's cool as heck. I'm gonna save this for like the B-sides, the blooper reel. But I think maybe I'll go back to there's a couple things I could do. I could increase this size a little bit. I generally tend to stick with 300, 400 just because that's what that's what works in the website itself, but for my own purposes, I can make it a little bigger. So, I mean, it still looks cool. It's not, if you really squint, you can kind of see that it's a bunch of flowers. What I might do is maybe just get rid of this for a second. And yeah, man, you can kind of see that they're flowers. I really like these. I know that I'm not going to end up keeping them like this, but I like what it looks like. So I'm going to save them for later. But let me maybe go back to the world of sanity here. All right, so that was a fun diversion, but I don't think I'm going to keep it that way. So let me get rid of no stroke, and let me maybe let me change this back to like 10 was kind of a reasonable middle ground. Yeah, maybe. I think maybe 5 and 5 was okay. Yeah, you know, you could play with the numbers itself, but it's kind of up to your artistic choices, what you think looks best. So let me think about this. I could do a few things. One thing I could do is sort of make the green of each flower a little bit different. So like basically draw a green rectangle in here. I kind of like how it is now, but actually I like how it is now. So I'm going to leave it, but you could try that. If you're curious about other things you could do, you could maybe pick a random shade of green for each cell and lay that down before you draw your flower. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to play with. Let me think. One thing I could do is maybe make this have a frame rate of, I don't know, like 1, just so it's not so animated, but we see it in action a little bit better. You could make the rows and columns random, so instead of it always being 5 and 5, you know, it kind of fluctuates. You could do it that way. I don't feel super strongly. I kind of like just having a static number. We could play with maybe like the ratio. So right now all of my flowers kind of look the same. They're all like a circle and then 4 other circles. You could play with that, make your center circle a little smaller sometimes. So we could try that. So like weird, do I insert on somehow? Random, and again, similar kind of logic that we had above, like size times 0.5 size, or I don't want size there, do I want like petal size? Yeah. This will make the center part of my flower not always the same kind of ratio or the same size as the rest of my petals. I don't know what that'll look like. I don't know if I'll keep it, but let's just see what it looks like. So I think maybe 0.5 is too small, because you can kind of see that it's really just circles, and that kind of looks dumb, but that's not bad. So now some of them are a little bit, the petal, the center part is a little bit smaller. It's kind of cool. And we could even say like petal size times 1.25, something like that. So now it can get a little bit bigger, and you get things like, let me find one. I guess this one. I don't hate it. I don't love it. I could go either way. I kind of like the simplicity of them all being kind of the same, but you could play with that. All right, I think that's about where I'm going to end it. I think I'm going to maybe change this back to just petal size, though. I think I liked that kind of the simplicity of that line was kind of beautiful to me. So I'm going to keep it like that. Yeah, I like that. So now my center petal is always the same as the other ones. It's not a petal, I know that, but whatever you would call that thing. Okay. So I think that's it for my January event today. I think what I'm going to do after this video is just kind of play around with some of these parameters a little more, come up with you know, a couple examples that look cool to me, and post them as my January prompt, and I'll post the code and stuff in this video tonight as well. But for now, I mean, I'm pretty happy with this. I set out to make a grid of permutations of a flower, and here we are. That is indeed exactly what I accomplished. So I'm pretty happy with this, and I think it looks pretty cool. I mentioned some things you could play with. You could play with the flowers, make them more realistic, or make them a certain kind of flower, or play with the background a little bit more. Maybe connect them somehow with like a vine or something. You could change it to not be a draw flower function, and you could make it a draw whatever you want function, and create some random permutation of that thing based on the parameters and some randomness, and create your own grid. Maybe it's a grid of, I don't know, dogs or cats or smiley faces or something like that. But I don't know, I like flowers. They're 5 circles, and so they fit in my brain. All right, cool. So like I said, I'm going to post this stuff tonight and call this sort of my January 25th project. So thanks for watching. As always, if you have questions, or if you have comments, or if you just want to say hi, either leave a comment on the video or come to happycoding.io, come to the forum and come say hi. I'd love to hear from y'all. But for now, I'm just going to say have a great night. Thanks for watching, and happy coding.